the meeting to order of the Board of Trustees for our regular board meeting here Tuesday, October 13th, 2020. We are at the Andover campus in the Kansas meeting room. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, and it's my understanding that I think the prior agenda we had did not include a board action item, just for your edification, which is 9C. How do you pronounce that? Ambition? Ambition?
I think ambition.
Ambition agreement. And I think that's been provided to you. So that's a new item on the agenda as of today. So having said that, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
You have to do the roll call
We
thing?
need to do a roll call? Okay. Just want to make sure.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay. Yay.
So, and Mary Martha's homesick, so you know she's not feeling well and got a hold of us this afternoon, so I don't think she's going to join us today. So that's why she's not here.
My understanding, the next item on the agenda is an executive session. Do I have a motion to move the board to recess into executive session for consultation with legal counsel in regards to acquisition of real estate, to include the board, Dr. Kim Kroll, Kent Collins, Lori Winningham, Ray Cannell, with action to follow as appropriate?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye, unless
30
you're going to
minutes.
roll call. Yes.
Yes.
Trustee Winslow?
Yes, but we need a time in and a timeout.
Yes. Trustee
One more
Lechtenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
For 30 minutes, yes.
Okay, so
I'll put you in a Zoom room.
And you'll let Kent and
Yes.
Lori in?
Yes.
Okay. We'll, as soon as we get everybody in, we'll identify that as our start time,
start time,
and
And then go
then
30
30
minutes.
minutes.
then go 30 minutes.
All right.
I think we're already in.
Are we in?
Oh, here we go. Okay.
Lucky.
Thanks, you guys. We'll come get you.
Okay, Lori, will you identify the start time?
It is 4:33. I'll just leave it.
Thanks a lot. Okay, our start time's 4:33. We're going to go for 30 minutes, so we're looking at 5:03. And is Ray going to do a presentation? Ray, you got the floor?
All right. Yeah, all right, Ken.
Awesome.
We'll,
Had to think, I got a lot of them.
Fight over it?
yeah, we'll. Okay, thank you.
Okay, doors shut.
Just about. Kim, I think, is going to visit with you about culinary facility option. There was a lease presented, Wichita State. I reviewed it.
Laura, did you move these to a breakout room?
Oh,
Because I can still see in here.
Floor broke out.
thanks, Bill. Okay.
I think where I stopped was, I reviewed the proposed lease from Wichita State. It would involve the Butler Culinary.
Laura, there are still several of us on here.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I know this is exec session, so we want to make sure it's in the breakout room correctly.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
Laura,
Let me go grab somebody.
I'm not supposed to be listening. Excuse yourselves.
Why
One
don't
of
you
these
do what
days.
the debate commission's gonna do, just turn the mic off.
did it off of this monitor up here, but.
The middle one's not.
Does Matt have the control? I don't know. You just go right ahead and blast it out there.
I don't want to
You
get.
start us off. I don't know that I'm willing to, but maybe you're brave enough.
Really, I try to forget about it.
Oh, I do too. My kids remind me. They're the ones that are like, Mom, you're in that protected age group now. You getting everybody in, are you?
Yep, we're good. Should be good.
You set? Okay. Jim, recognitions.
Okay, I have some recognitions. I'm going to sit so I can sit right in front of my microphone if that's okay. And I know we've got some folks in the room, so that's great. I want to recognize tonight Monica Zavala and Megan Chambers and Michelle Ponce. These folks are all have been really actively involved in CACRO. Monica is being recognized for being the planning for the college. She's planning for the college coordinator for CACRO. Megan is the vice president for professional development for CACRO, and Michelle is the past president. They all represent Butler. CACRO is the Kansas Association of Collegiate Registrars and Admissions Officers. And CACRO is a statewide organization that contributes to advancement of higher education in Kansas and also nationally. And so it's professional development opportunities, encouragement of members to use high standards as they work with students and do their work in student services. And so we've had, for years and years, we've had folks really involved in CACRO. And I am proud of these guys for taking the time to do this because it takes time away from their work responsibilities, but it also brings great value back to the college. They not only learn professionally and develop their skills and grow, but have the opportunity to share all of that with their colleagues and with the college. And so I'm always appreciative that we have folks that make that commitment to serve at the state level because it puts Butler out there as a leader and helps us be a better institution. So I want to say thank you to Monica and Megan and Michelle for your great work in CACRO. Thank you. Next I have, I want to recognize Alitra Cheney-Prophet. Alitra has been named to the Handshake Advisory Board. And Alitra is our Director of Career Services and has just recently been selected to serve on Handshake. Handshake is a job placement tool. How long? We just have put that in place, I think, fairly recently, right, Alitra? That works to elevate the voices of community colleges in the job market, provides a structured way to integrate community college opportunities and specific feedback and help identify larger trends in our community college space that align with industry and provide opportunities for our students. And so Alitra, thank you again for being willing to participate and again represent Butler, but be able to bring that information back to us so we can do better. So, thank you.
Kind of bad timing to have something named Handshake, right?
I know.
Maybe the fist bump
You
or the
can't
elbow
handshake.
tap,
I know. That's
the air
exactly right.
five.
And then certainly last but not least, Trustee Smith had a
Oh.
birthday last week.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So happy birthday.
Thank you.
Julie thinks we should sing to you, but I told her she'd have to bust it out first before I did. So anyway, happy birthday.
Yep.
Hope it was a good one.
Yeah, it was.
Good. Oh, I forgot my narrative. Did you get any opportunities or anything from folks? Okay, so I think we're okay, and I don't think we have any visitors in the audience for public comment. Okay. Well, if it's okay, I'll skip my narrative since we don't have anybody that's going to join us for public comment.
Public comment? Move forward. Shannon. Kiersten, you with us?
Thanks for coming, you guys.
Somebody's connecting.
We can come back to Kiersten maybe. There we go.
Okay, we're ready.
Hey, is it my turn?
Yeah.
Sorry. Good afternoon. I'm the president of our operational staff, and our fund development committee has been trying to come up with alternative fundraising options for this year. Normally during this time of year, there we go. Normally during this time of year, we are busy preparing for our annual November pie sales and December craft show fundraisers. We take the ever-changing status of this pandemic seriously and cannot risk the health and safety of our faculty, staff, and community members. All of the proceeds from our fundraising events go toward the book scholarship, cost of the welcome back tables, and hosting families in need for Christmas and other charitable giving opportunities. We hope we're able to resume these important activities again, hopefully soon. So our next operational staff meeting is scheduled for this Thursday, October 15th. And that's all I have.
Was on. It's flashing. Okay, professional employees report. Terry, are you in Zoom with us?
I am here,
There you are.
and I have nothing to report. We are working as hard as we can for the support of our students and our classes, as always. And I'm just here to listen in on your deliberations. And I thank you for coming to Andover today.
Okay, well, thank you, Terry. Board Finance Committee report. Didn't have a meeting today.
Board Finance didn't meet today.
Okay. Foundation Board report.
Nothing to report. We don't meet until next month.
Okay. Moving on, President's report.
A couple of things for you. This week, we always update our COVID cases on our website each week. This week, we have 11 active positive students and no employees. We have some that are in quarantine. Last week, I think we had 12 active positive students and 2 employees maybe. So we're managing our numbers fairly well compared to some of our counterparts. And, you know, as we've talked and, you know, continue to say, I think the protocols and the work that was done this summer with social distancing and getting classrooms ready and offices ready has really been helpful and probably has helped with a lot of this. And so, sure.
About how many of the instructors are Zooming class?
You know, we have, I think, between instructors and staff, I think we have 70 or 80 people that are working remotely. Lori, are you on? Can you tell us how many instructors are working remotely? I can't tell you for sure. Lori, Lori Mosier, do you know? Okay. Yeah, I can get that number for you. And, you know, in some situations, we have folks that are moving back and forth because or maybe Shelley knows even, they're moving back and forth because they may have been exposed and have to quarantine for, you know, a period of time. And so when the semester was started, well, even before the semester was started, the faculty were all encouraged to make sure that they had a remote option that was running right alongside their face-to-face option for them and for students if we had to switch back and forth. So I can get that number for you
So
though.
at least the student doesn't have to miss class.
Yeah, no,
Nicole?
there's no reason for anybody. Oh, there's Shelley. Shelley, can you help us?
Yeah, a little bit, I think. Myself and Teresa Eastman, who is the Director of Disability Services, processed a little over 100 requests to work remotely. And that included staff and faculty alike. And I believe the faculty number was around, it was around 40, maybe 45. And the remaining were staff members and adjunct faculty. If you include adjunct faculty, that might be a little higher for the faculty side.
Thanks, Shelley. Appreciate that. Next month on the board agenda, we will do a more formal report. You know, we've had CARES Act funding from the federal level. We've had state Spark task funding that's come from the federal level to the state task force that's come to the community colleges. We've had some funding that's come or some reimbursement that's come to us from the county Spark funds. And so we have to obviously track all of that and do reports to the county and to the state and to the federal level. And so on the November agenda, we'll have a more comprehensive report just from a discussion perspective, so you can see how that's all being tracked and what it's been spent for and the guidelines that we have to follow. So we'll give you some of the first reports that we have to do are due the end of October, very first part of November. And so we'll bring some of that information back, but it'll give you an idea of how that funding has had to have been distributed. Enrollment update right now, 7,347 students and 68,050 credit hours. We're in the middle of a really aggressive phone calling campaign. We called, I think there were about 2,700 students on the list a couple of weeks ago. We didn't get through all of them, but we were calling them to remind them about enrolling in 8-week classes, second 8-week classes. And we're starting again this week to go back through that list and call students again about spring classes and spring enrollment. We already have about over 4,000 credit hours enrolled for spring. At this point in time, they've done a lot of cohort enrollment. And so really working the phones and spending a lot of time touching, reaching out to students and doing some personal touch. I made phone calls a couple of weeks ago. A lot of us did. The executive team's all doing phone calls, and we've got a number of staff college-wide that are calling. We also have faculty that are doing a faculty phone calling campaign each week. That's in place and has been all semester long, I believe. Well, actually, even before that, I think. Yeah, spring. Reaching out to students specifically in their program areas. And so working hard on those things. A couple of weeks ago, Lori and Heather Rinkenbaugh and Donnie Featherston and I drove north to the Flint Hills to Council Grove and Marion to check in on those folks and check those sites out. And then the following week, Heather and Donnie and I did our South Loop, our South tour, and we went to Rose Hill and saw some students there and went on to McConnell and stopped at Boston Rec then. So we always try and do that each semester, do a tour to the different sites and stuff. And then in November, just kind of a heads up, we'll do a work session probably associated with the November board meeting to do budget update at that point in time for you. So that's what I have. I'll answer questions if you've got them. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Education Facilities Authority report. We met, there was a discussion about the Project Beauty over there where they put in some landscaping, and they had some money left over and wanted to know whether or not we would be willing to contribute with some funds, which of course would trickle to us as well at the college, to add some trees and water. I don't think that went over too big, but we didn't have enough information to really answer the question. But just so you know, that's kind of still on the agenda floating. It was tabled to get some more information. I'll let you know more next time we meet, which is in December. We hope to have more information. The cost of maintenance over there at the facility just keeps going up every year. And we're cutting it real close at the end of the year to meet all of our maintenance costs. So we may, as far as the facility goes, come to the stakeholders, one being the board, to ask for some additional funding and reevaluate to contribute some funds to the long-term maintenance fund. Fair?
Yeah, we've got some projects looming down the road, track replacement and turf replacement that'll be, significant cost. The annual maintenance in that facility, we've got insurance, of course, and just sort of general maintenance kinds of things. There's elevator inspection. There's a kind of a core group of things that come out of long-term maintenance fund on an annual basis. And right now, the three entities are contributing to that long-term maintenance fund, but we're not accumulating dollars towards replacement of turf and track. There's still funding that's held in the foundation for the stadium. And the skybox rental and leases are coming due. And so we'll have some of those opportunities available. But right now, what we're trying to do is put together a pretty defined budget of what we think some of those longer term costs will be coming up. The electronics in the scoreboard after this year it'll be out of date, and they won't service that anymore. So we have that kind of expense coming up. And so trying to put together some more concrete costs of what that looks like. And we'll have more information at the next authority board meeting, I think, for the authority board to talk about. So
Right. We don't have the information that we need to really act on, but once we get it, we'll pass it on, because our involvement here as a board, unfortunately, we contribute to that.
everybody does. Yeah.
Everybody does
Yeah.
that are stakeholders. So, if we need to contribute some money, we need to look at fundraising or looking into our budget to try to help with that facility. Other than that, sports activities are all set for the spring and stacked up.
Yeah, they're really stacked up.
So, but that's pretty much it for what's going on over there. Back to Student Government Association. Did we ever find?
Kirsten, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
We can't hear you.
Okay, there we go. All right, sorry. I don't have a camera at the moment. So since the last time we talked in September, we've been pretty busy. Towards the end of September, we celebrated Constitution Day, where we handed out cupcakes and mini preambles to students in the student union. And then we also held some events for National Suicide Prevention Week, which took place from September 7th through the 11th. And we handed out information cards with suicide hotline information on them that we got from Nancy Ham. And then we also created a message board on our whiteboard in the union, and we left markers out for students to leave messages on and for other students to read. Last week was Mental Health Awareness Week, and we held several events last week to help students better cope with stress and understand mental health. We posted informational quotes on all of our social media each day of the week. Monday, we handed out water bottles with motivating quotes tied to each bottle. Wednesday, we handed out stress balls to students and staff in the 1500 building over here in El Dorado. Thursday, we had another love wall where students could write messages on our whiteboard. And then finally on Friday, we handed out goodie bags with candy and like little fidgets in them. And during that time, we also helped with a sign up for a diversity group for the Inclusion Council. Excuse me. And then another big thing that we have recently came up with is that we started doing giveaways. We decided to do 4 giveaways total, so 2 each semester, to help promote our social media. Each giveaway contains various Butler gear, a backpack, an Amazon Echo, and a $20 food gift card. We held our first giveaway from October 5th through the 9th, and we gave them a week to enter in. and they had to follow us, like the picture, and share and tag us. And we ended up with over 100 entries, and we nearly tripled our following by about 300 students. And we plan to have another one in September. And then for the future coming up, we just have another SGA meeting on the Andover campus at 4 p.m. on October 21st.
Okay, thank you, Kiersten. I appreciate that. Next item on the agenda is monitoring reports. We have the annual advancement division report by Tom. You moved on.
Yeah. Make sure your mic, is that microphone on for you?
Can you hear me? It's green. That's good. Okay. My name is Tom Borrego, Executive Director of the Foundation and Special Assistant to the President. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the Advancement Division report. For those of you who may not be familiar, the Advancement Division is made up of the Foundation, which is the fundraising arm of the institution, Community Advancement, which is more like our community relations kind of group, and marketing. Under fundraising, we were successful last year, 2019, 2020, of raising a little over $1.4 million for the foundation, which was only about $6,000 off from the previous year. As you know, we were lucky to get our auction in before COVID-19 hit, so we were able to collect on that fundraiser. So we were able to hit our marks. As we move forward in our fundraising for this year, we're monitoring how we're going to be able to achieve our goals. We still don't know whether or not the auction will occur. In March, we'll still wait to see how that's going to happen. But we've already started the process of visiting with our sponsors and are getting good indications of support continuing, despite the fact that we may not have an auction, where we may see some slippage or those that contribute at the auction. So, but we'll keep the group informed as to how we handle that. Our transfer student scholarships you see here listed were a number of people that received those scholarships. It's a wonderful program for those moving on to their next step in their academic careers. And so you see a list of individuals who received or were honored during that process. We also are fortunate enough to have 5 new board members joining the board in November. We looked at individuals from different parts of the county, as well as graduates, and those that we think would be essential to filling the seats of our previous board members. John Blickenstaff, who's out of Andover, owns a trucking company. He is joining us. He's an alum. We have Nelson Mosley, who's the chief of police over in Rose Hill. He's a 91 graduate, is joining us. Betsy Redler from Wichita, who's the wife of Scott Redler, who is the CEO of Freddy's, will be joining us, as well as Jay Staley, who is the president of Interim Health, is 82 grad. And I think that is...
And Alitra.
Alitra, yes.
Yeah.
Alitra Cheney Prophet, who you met earlier, she is joining us as well. So we're proud to have those 5 join this board. It's a good, I think, well-rounded board, and we look forward to working with them. You also see the benefit auction numbers. I'll just point out that this event continues to have a positive impact on our fundraising. We settled in around $247,000 this year. We've exceeded our goal from the past couple of years. Actually, what we raised a couple of years, we exceed our goal considerably each year. Well-run program by Mary Moon and her volunteers. So, and Mary's in the audience. So, thank you, Mary, for your continued good work. You'll also notice that on the corporate sponsors that we continue to expand our involvement in that. The good work that Mary Moon has done allows us to engage our corporate friends in different ways, and I don't see that ending. So that is a good source of revenue for the foundation, and will probably continue to be so. So overall, fundraising is looking along. We'll be looking at projects sometime this year focused on the college. We were going to start the plaza project on this spring, that held up because of COVID, back on that side of the can, as well as looking at other opportunities. So foundation is working closely with the president on identifying those projects. had a wonderful year, great challenging work. Our training started back late last year, and then COVID hit, and we do our meetings virtually. I was part of that class, and I'll just say that Eric did an excellent job trying to create the conversation and objectives that group tries to do. Oh, I ran out of juice. Thank you. That it tries to accomplish every year and did it as well as anybody could do it. So that particular program, I think, has learned how to do this. It probably will encounter this again. And so through all the glitches and all of that, they're just doing a positive job, and the community is responding very well to what they do. We also have the Life Enrichment Program, which is a community relations program. It's a reach out to the community, and you'll see the numbers on that as well. It continues to get high involvement from the community. All of those are being hosted virtually as well. And although it's not ideal, it is a way to continue that relationship with the community, and it's getting positive responses as well, despite COVID. So finally, the last section is community relations and marketing. Kelly Snedden is the director of that area, and she's outlined a number of items that they're working on. The overall, I think the point to mention here is that Kelly and her group are trying to use technology to help improve enrollment, and they've engaged in some software that allows them to be smarter on how they speak to our prospective students, how they determine where we should focus our conversations, and trying to be a little bit more critical of how we spend our dollars for those that look like they would be more responsive to us. So instead of a shotgun approach and waiting for people to come to us, they are looking for ways to engage those that seem to be nibbling at us and then get strategic. So it's a little different way of marketing to the students. There's still the branding of the institution. There's still the marketing to the different age levels and the different cohorts, but we're even getting a little finer on how we communicate. It's kind of scary, to be quite honest with you. You always wonder why you're getting certain ads on your social media. Well, I know why now. Very clever stuff. But they continue to work hand in hand with enrollment management, trying to populate what we call the prospect pool, having enough people to speak to in order to get the enrollment numbers we need to hit. So a lot of good stuff in that report, and a lot of good work being done in that area.
In that prospect pool, how many people have we actually say?
Well, what we do is, so if there's a goal, a number that we want to hit as far as enrollment, we have a number that we look at that's much higher that will matriculate into the number that we want to hit for enrollment. So one of the challenges we have is if we need to have more people in the prospect pool farther up the funnel, we have to have more marketing dollars to reach those people. And the conversation we're having is, how do we begin to try not to spend that money, but be smarter on who we're talking to? And so that's one of the things they're trying to do is not just naturally just expand that pool if we don't have to and spend the money, but rather look for smarter ways of looking at specific people that we can speak to and have more success with. So it's less of a shotgun approach. I wouldn't say it's a rifle approach, but it's a lot sharper than a shotgun.
I mean, do you have any metrics that say, hey, we captured 3,000 people this way using the funnel, or just...
Well, we're finding that out because this is the first time we've used this software before. There's some traditional ways of reaching out to people through ads, through mailers, through emails, and that's okay, but it's hard to know how they responded. The software we're using will tell us a little bit more how they respond.
And I had a question too. I really don't know that much about it, but at the beginning it's staffed, like at the top here on page 5. Is there 5 full-time, or are you paid staff, or how does the foundation operate, I guess?
So the foundation has its own employees, and then we have a couple of employees that are shared with the college.
So does the foundation pay their own people out of the foundation?
Not completely. This year, because of the cutbacks, we took on a lot of all the salaries of our employees this year, because we have funds. There's called a board directive fund where we try to put money into every year to allow us to respond to different needs and that type of thing. And the need this budget year was the budget. And so the board agreed to go ahead and try to underwrite all of our salaries this year. That fund doesn't have an infinite, it has bottom, but at least we could do it for this year. And so we did that.
So if you raised 1.4 million, does that, from that 1.4 million, go to pay your staff, or does that money go somewhat to the college, somewhat to the staff, and the college also contributes for the staff?
So the unrestricted funds that we have a goal that we have to raise for unrestricted funds to cover our costs. Then we also have income coming off of an endowment that also allows us to pay some of those costs. The rest of the monies are temporarily restricted, which means they have specific purposes on how they need to be used. And for instance, scholarships or programs or capital projects like the stadium, we can't use those in any other way.
Right. I guess my focus question was, does the college pay, how much does the college pay for the staff of the foundation? I guess would be a better question, more pointed.
I don't know the number off the top of my head. I could get that for you. It's like maybe 2.5 FTEs, something like that.
Yeah, and because some of your staff has changed over time, I don't know what the split is anymore, but we can get that for you.
Yeah,
I'm just curious.
Off the top of my head, my salary is paid by the college, and Mary Moon, I think half of her salary is paid by the college, and I think Avery, half of Avery's is as well. But I think that's right.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Mhm.
It's kind of fluctuated a little bit over
Yeah, I'm
time,
just
just
curious.
as people have come and go, and some of the jobs or the classifications of the jobs have changed and stuff. So
Any other questions?
I think it's also critical. I would like to just say, last year the foundation distributed $750,000 in scholarships to students. And we're really, really lucky to have a foundation of strength like that. Foundations at the community college level are not as common as they are at the university level. It's really kind of a newer concept. Our foundation's been in place for a number of years, and so it's one of the stronger ones among the Kansas community college system. But I think that the ability that we have to distribute that amount in scholarships is a really strong indicator of the long-term support that Butler has had from donors across the country. It's not just Butler County folks, but donors all over the place that really believe in what we do and have had maybe their own personal great start at Butler as students. And so we've had some great support and continue to have that. So really proud of that. Helps our students significantly. So.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Bob.
Tom.
Tom, I'm sorry. Why am I thinking Bob? Anyway, Tom, for all of your hard work with the foundation, and appreciate the report. It's nice to see what you guys are up to. But yeah, your contributions they're just unfounded. It's really nice to have that. Like Kim says, at a JUCO level, it's really nice to have a foundation that's as strong as ours. So much appreciated, Tom.
Thank you.
Appreciated. And thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Tom.
And Bob on the brain today, I guess.
Amazing how we all went, Tom.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is board strategic discussion, issues and opportunities, faculty development update. I've got you listed, Kim, but
Yeah, but don't
like
think
Mark
I'm doing it. I
Jarvis.
think Mark Jarvis and Lori are going to do the presentation for us. I like to put the faculty development update on the agenda each semester, spring and fall, or fall and spring, however you want to look at it, so that they have an opportunity to tell you the great stuff that's happening with our faculty and in the classrooms and what the new ideas are. So, yep, you'll have to be in front of a microphone, or we'll give you a handheld. Do you want a handheld? Or you probably want her in front of a camera, don't you, Matt? Okay, all right.
Wonderful. Is that good? All right, great. I'm Lori Mosher, the Faculty Development Specialist here at Butler. And Mark Jarvis is actually Zooming in with us, and he has a whole presentation for the numbers of things that we've been doing with faculty. We have been very busy since the pandemic, making sure that our faculty transition to a virtual world is as seamless as possible. So that is what we have been tasked with and what we've been doing over these past months. As we've come back this fall, we've also helped faculty adjust to how they want to do their blended content, or if there's a student that is needing access from home, how they can do both things at one time by being in the classroom in a face-to-face potentially, but yet having a student on Zoom that has the same access to be able to learn the content from that instructor. So we've had some really, really good training from Avid, and I think Mark will also share about that. But we're just glad to be here this evening to share what we've been doing. So we're ready for Mr. Jarvis.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have my PowerPoint on screen right now? Does it look like? So.
Yes, we sure do.
Okay, great. Just didn't want to get ahead of myself. So, yes, we're here to speak about the Faculty Development Program, of course. And last we spoke with you was February. And, you know, February, we had all kinds of lofty goals for what we thought we might be going to do next and where we were going to go. And then it didn't happen. So at that time in March, everything got very complicated. And during those the two spring breaks, the first initial spring break and the subsequent spring break, we scrambled. And that's kind of what we're going to visit with you about just a little while here. I would offer that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or more politely said, adversity builds character. And I would offer, if you walk away from this tonight with nothing else, just to realize that Butler faculty and staff and students are very resilient, and great things have happened, I think, in spite of or in light of the coronavirus. So there was a lot of adjusting to be done. So shortly after the college went remote, we would have had an institutional development day. I believe it's April 9th it was, but instead we hosted a PJ IDD where everyone could work at home in their pajamas. And when Donnie Featherston first pitched the idea, we were all kind of like, well, that sounds kind of fun. And then, but we didn't really know what kind of participation we might have. And actually we had so many, we actually ran up to the limit of our license for Zoom in a virtual PJ IDD to where we had to, couldn't even let everyone into the big general session at one time for a bit there. It was also our first venture into something of that scale. And Donnie and Lori Winningham and others, and Lori Mosher, there were several people that helped just navigate, facilitate, and champion that crazy big event. We intended to do, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you increase the font size on your screen just a little bit? Or I know that's a PowerPoint, so maybe you can't do that, but.
Well, let's just see what I can do.
Okay, thanks.
Is it any different?
Nope, doesn't look like it, but. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
We got it.
That's all right.
All right, keep going.
Okay. So we were going to do a really great event. One thing I would mention is it's amazing how well poised Butler was for some things. And in August, actually, of 19, we anticipated building an event called Wired, which was going to help people get better at teaching online. And lo and behold, when we went remote, there was a big demand for teaching online and teaching remotely. And then we hosted in May an event we called Boot Up Camp, in which we had around 50 participants from Butler and a couple of other institutions. We had a big participation from Avid National, where they came in for a full day and helped us do things. So also we, in August, host orientations for new faculty, new full-time and adjunct faculty, and then we are pretty adept at hosting second Saturday events, and we had to reconfigure all of those things and try to go with virtual events. In addition to virtual events, we did some stuff that you're going to hear about, namely Canvas environment called Keep Teaching at Butler. So I like to call this pandemic pedagogy. So March to July, it went kind of like this. Of course, you've heard that phrase over and over and over, pivot to remote or some similar catchphrase. But what that meant was we had to scramble. And in the scrambling, we were in good hands. IS had already, and we'd had a Zoom subscription for something like 4 or 5 years. Microsoft Suite was in place. Microsoft Teams was ready to go. And we leveraged all those things. The infrastructure overall helped a ton. Ed Tech had prepared us for this moment because we had master courses and blueprinted courses, and all of our courses were built at a certain standard. And every faculty member had been at least generally versed in the idea of how to conduct business in an online setting. So again, those things just all seemed kismet, just meant to be. It was just couldn't have been better that IS and Ed Tech were positioned like we were. Then the rapid response team was rapidly configured. You've heard, I'm sure, about the critical incident management team, but this group was a little bit more grassroots and a little bit more focused on the granular area of instruction itself. Donnie Featherston and Heather Rinkenbaugh kind of spearheaded that team for us. And with that team, we did a lot of things in short order, including ramping up social media for students and building out this keep teaching at Butler, keep learning at Butler, keep working at Butler environments for different audiences to try to help them get some kind of toehold when things were so crazy there at that second spring break. But what I really am most happy about was this next bullet, which I apologize you cannot probably read, but I will read it for you. 100 faculty stepped up. Whenever things got tough, the tough got going. And our faculty answered a call we put out. We said, hey, if you're good at any one of these 10 things, then let us know so that we can help you mentor people that might need help. And we put that out on something like a Thursday, and by the following Monday, it was just a really quick turnaround. We had a huge response. And so our faculty that were technologically adept, and then all of the rest of the leads and chairs, again, we had infrastructure and able-bodied people to get things accomplished. It was amazing. And on top of that, our team started to conduct the Zoom workshops right there during the second spring break, where we reached out to faculty. And let me see, I can scout out some information here for you. Without putting it on screen right now, because who knows what would happen. Between March and now, we've had about 140 workshops, and a good number of those started to land during this phase that I'm talking about. So about 36 of them were in between March and May. Another 20 or so started to fall during the boot up camp and such and such. So we really took on virtual events like the boot up camp and others to make things happen. So that's great. That's a lot of information going out to faculty, and a lot of faculty trying to get their sea legs. And then we had other complications, because when we went back to the ground and back to the classroom, there were things that none of us were accustomed to. Teaching with masks on and other PPE, cleaning classrooms, downsizing classrooms for social distancing, just all sorts of new challenges. There was a great amount of anxiety, as you might imagine, and yet it's just amazing to me how people bounced back. There were a number of faculty who expressed to us that they were not comfortable teaching online back in March or May, but then in come August, they were actually pretty fond of it and pretty adept at it. They liked the intimacy that they could have with breakout rooms and one-on-one office hours and Zoom and so on. And there were other challenges like active learning. Some of us had gotten very accustomed to moving students around and getting people in small groups and all sorts of shenanigans that we could no longer do, right down to things like handouts. I teach a literature class. I'm an English major, and I like to hand things out to people. And it's kind of a challenge to do that now. It's kind of not a very good idea in general to pass papers around. And then office hours and consultations and so on were, some folks almost felt life-threatening, but the college has been super accommodating and the faculty have been really responsive to host their office hours virtually. And I can say for myself and Lori Mosier anyway, we've had a better response than ever with virtual office hours and the participation rates from faculty and students. So it's been a great thing. We continue to try to find alternative and altered delivery strategies, and we'll keep working on that always. But it's been a challenge to reach teachers. Not everyone is just sitting at our computer all day, and there's been all sorts of unique ways we've been able to do that. Our newsletter reaches out to 448 faculty and staff, and we have a response rate that's very impressive, and we're getting a lot of participation from that. Lori and I both commit ourselves to walking about both campuses and trying to get everywhere that we can get to visit with people and just to keep our ear to the ground and see how we might help and how our program might do more. Virtual office hours has been a thing since March for us when we were putting in 40 hours a week between us just on screen. And now we average about 32 hours a week that we're on both campuses and virtually to try to be available for faculty. And then we're doing virtual events. Second Saturday, last Saturday, we had about 25 people and somewhere around 6 sessions that were very well received. So there's a lot still going on in our area. Of course, reaching students is more important probably than anything else. And, you know, there's the traditional things like email and Canvas and Canvas notifications. That works pretty good. Outlook email works pretty good. But Aviso, I would just say, is another element of the saving grace as far as why has Butler been as successful as it's been. Lots of infrastructure, super resilient faculty and students, but also Aviso that's allowed us to reach out to students with alternative emails. In some cases, advising and so on has been able to text students. We're able to build a network of support for students that are dealing with all kinds of COVID situations, and the alerts that we issue are also really a safety blanket or a safety net to help us help students perform at their best. So our area has been busier than ever and adapting and changing and hopefully, I think, helping everyone navigate the challenges of COVID. So Lori is in the house, and then I'm here. If we could entertain any questions, we'd be happy to.
Any questions from anybody? Great work. You've heard me say it before. We pivoted very well compared again to a lot of our counterparts because of our strong faculty development team and the work that they had done for a number of years. The fact that we've been teaching online for 20 years and had a really, really strong ed tech area. And we'd spent the last couple of years doing a lot of infrastructure and technology upgrade because of the capital mill outlay. And we made that transition pretty darn seamlessly. But you know, it really took some great leadership in faculty development and ed tech and really among everybody to make it happen. And so really proud of the work that's been going on and it still continues in the classroom and with staff and faculty development. So thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark, Lori. Great work. The transition has been pretty seamless without problems, and thanks to you guys. Much appreciated. Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to board action items, policy revisions are first on the agenda. I thought I'd have Kim go ahead and kind of quickly summarize us up to date where we're at. And then I thought I'd take each of these policy revisions individually. We'll go ahead and get motions forward, and then we'll open up discussions and vote on each. So Kim, if you want to start with the code of conduct and responsibilities.
Sure. And I think I have Phil there. Yeah, I see your face there, Phil. We'll let him offer a comment or two. The code of conduct and responsibilities and the resolution of censure policies are exactly the same as were on the agenda last month. And you asked us to go back and put that information in front of Ray again and have him review it. And so I did that and provided to him when I sent everything back to him. I noted on, each of those policies, the different institutions' policies that had been reviewed and that had been used to strengthen our code of conduct and responsibilities, and then also resolution of censure was new. And so I gave him all of those institutional policies. Some of them came from community colleges in Kansas, some came from out of state. All of that information is posted to SharePoint for you folks to look at as well. And when he did his review, he was confident that the language in both of those policies, was okay. And there wasn't anything that violated state statute or raised any concern for him. Phil was also able to review all of that information and look at all those other institutional policies as well. And so both of those are back on the agenda this month with no change to them at all. But the new one then also, as we started to really look at these and review at some of the other institutional policies, Ray was appreciated the fact that this violation of board policy that's on the agenda provides kind of a stepwise approach. If there's a concern that board policy in some way has been violated, it would give you folks an opportunity to look at things in a more stepwise fashion and dig into information and decide if there's been, a violation of policy. So that's a new one that's on the agenda that we'll talk about in just a little bit. But code of conduct and responsibilities is the same. I know Mary Martha had identified or indicated last month, she's talked about implementing a fine along with release of confidential information. And Ray and I both went back and reviewed the information on the AG's website. Ray did, I did, and the fines that are identified on the AG's website really relate to not individuals releasing confidential information, but if we, for instance, had an open records request that we refused to comply with and had the opportunity or had the records to be able to do it, we could be found in violation because we didn't comply with that open records request. So we could be fined as an institution or as a board, or I guess it would be an institutional fine. Open meetings, if we were found in violation of an open meeting law, that fine would apply to us, not necessarily as an individual. So we went back and looked at that again, and I've talked to Mary Martha about that, so she understands that as well. Couldn't find anything that really applied to individual board members. So code of conduct is on as it was last month. Phil, I know you've had a chance to look at these, and what I have certainly talked with Phil about is, from his perspective as an HLC, longtime HLC peer reviewer and chairperson for site team visits, and his experience from an HLC perspective and from an accountability perspective, I think he brings some insight that's appropriate for us. So I'd let you offer some comments, Phil, if you want to as well.
Yeah, I would say that I've gone over the documents And having seen these sort of policies at many institutions, this is now considered pretty standard practice. There's nothing that surprised me. The approach to, for instance, the new document where you've got stages of responding to a violation. I think that would be considered pretty much a best practice. I just remind you that in terms of the Higher Learning Commission and accreditation, in the new criteria that have been moved into place in the last year, all board activities have been moved under ethical and responsible conduct and integrity. So this is really the focus of HLC's attention in terms of board policies and board behaviors. And remember, we're not talking like a very small organization with HLC. You're talking about 19 states, the whole center of the United States. All of the post-secondary institutions are part of this agency and share common practices, and all levels of institutions being expected to have clear statements and policies towards accountability and integrity is considered to be just the standard of what's expected. So, you know, we know that the next time we're going to be evaluated by HLC is in 2023, and this is a very good time for you to be reviewing and updating and clarifying your policies. So it seems like a very good, sound, smart thing to be doing at this point.
Okay, I just wanted to kind of give everybody some background on where we were at, and I think you at SharePoint there is that memo's on SharePoint.
Yeah.
With,
I tried to look at some of these that Rick comments about Ray that you said you included, and I'm sure you did put it in there, but
I did.
SharePoint is very
Mine aired
difficult
out
sometimes.
twice or 4 times.
Well, I
Never
know
back
Bill
from Bill.
Young was looking into the reason.
Well,
I
I would,
got into it last night.
I would, until it
I could
works
see
for everyone.
I could see
just
some, but
think
not
you
the new stuff.
Also email these documents. You must look at if you can, because it's really a problem that
Well, there were probably, I can't even tell you how many different policies there were. I bet there were 20 different institutional policies,
well,
probably.
That's great, but
yeah.
you can't look at them. You can't compare them.
No, I know.
Did you look at them? All of them?
Yes.
You managed to look at everything.
Yep.
Amazing. Why is it, Shelby, that you and I can't do this?
I was doing it on my phone. I don't know.
Well,
Laptop at the
Well,
office.
no, I was doing it on my laptop, so.
I know when I talk,
honestly, I initially had problems getting into SharePoint too, and thanks to my secretary, she called Lori,
Well, I
and they
used to
figured it
manage
out
the
so we could
SharePoint
get into it.
documents.
But yeah, it was an issue.
That's not an issue. I don't know, maybe check my permissions and so forth and so on.
I'll have Bill go back and look. I mean, we got you on it, at the last board meeting. We got you into SharePoint at the last board meeting on your laptop.
And maybe since those documents have been added, I don't know if you have to, if I remember right, you have to grant permission to those that can view it.
No, you already have permission granted. I mean, from the point that we set up the trustees SharePoint, you're granted permission to, so even if we add additional documents, we don't have to go back and re-grant that permission. I know when I talked to Bill this morning or yesterday morning, maybe Shelby, they'd never seen that error message before.
Yeah,
So they were trying to work on the, they were trying to work on the backside with Microsoft to figure it out. Maybe, I don't know if Bill's on or not.
Yeah, I'm on. And yeah, Shelby, I've been working with Microsoft to try to find that. It's a error that is generally exclusive to mobile devices with a SharePoint instance, unlike ours. So I'm trying to figure out why it happened on ours, but it sounds like you're able to get to it from a laptop. And so that mobile piece of it, I'm trying to figure that out. As soon as I do, you'll be the first to know.
I did not try it on my laptop, but I will.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that's what you said. I apologize.
No, I did not use my laptop.
Oh.
I'll try next.
So we'll maybe Bill connect you with Julie to try and make sure that there's not an access issue with her email address or something like that. Can we work through that as well?
Sure. We'll get a hold of Julie and Shelby both to work through these. I will tell you that all the permissions and all the access is set up correctly. I checked that all again today when I was troubleshooting Shelby's problem.
Okay.
And maybe my security.
He maybe can't hear you, so. Well, I don't think there's any security clearance. It's just
No,
your
I mean,
email
maybe
and,
my laptop.
oh, I see what you're saying.
Maybe you have a problem with the firewall I'm not aware of.
Okay, well, we'll have Bill work on that, okay?
I have a new sort of.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Oh, wait, we got any further discussion? Oh, sorry.
I discussed it a bit last month, so I'll
Yeah.
stand by what I said.
Okay, then we can go ahead and go to vote. Roll call.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Okay, moving on to the next one. These are somewhat together, but we'll take up violation of board policy first. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
So you want a little bit more input from me?
I think people have read all this.
Okay.
We talked about it before too, and it's pretty well laid out in the book.
Right.
But if anyone's got any questions, they can bring it up. We can have
I
discussion.
mean, I think the big question last time was to have Ray kind
Right.
of go over it.
Right.
Ray looked at this. He felt like this was a good, a really good step in the right direction because it offers some due process. If there's a concern, it's discussed. Person can have an opportunity to question it, provide evidence. Majority of the board then gets to decide whether there's a violation or not. It's not a single person that decides that. If there's not a violation, matter settled. If there is, then there's a stepwise process that can be followed. And again, collective board decides in the end, whether there's been, what the circumstances are and what the action needs to be. And so he felt really confident that this gave a more thorough, opportunity for due process if there is a concern, which is what we typically, we have some of these same kinds of policies in our staff processes for grievances and for things like that offer due process. So he thought this was a good addition to the list of board policies, that it protects people, I guess, from being, wrongly accused or, wrongly pointed out.
Okay, we've got a first and a second, and is there any further discussion? If not, we'll move forward with the roll call.
Ding, 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 ding.
No.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm looking at the differences, and while I agree that it's nice, I guess one of the basic questions I would have is who has more authority? The board with this policy? I don't see that, but maybe you can put it down. And then the second thing is, why didn't we have a little bit more of a policy? How does this compare to other colleges of our size, or not even necessarily our size, but comparable?
We did, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just used to, I've seen a lot of disputes looked at by ombudsman committees, ombudsman appointed, things like that, and that nature, and it kind of does come in from all sides and enables staff and governing boards to take a more non-one-sided view.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Well, I think so. This is really specifically board oriented. So the board would decide. There isn't any outside input into this unless there's a concern that it was actually a criminal violation, and then it would go, outside of the college. But it's really board related. If you read through it, it's the board collectively that decides. We did not have anything like this in place before, but Seward County Community College, Northeast Community College in Nebraska, Maricopa in Arizona were some of the institutions that had some of these kinds of stepwise processes in place. And Kansas City, Kansas Community College didn't have anything quite as comprehensive as this, but they have kind of a due process. It's more generalized language really than the specific steps here, but this was built off of some of those other institutional policies.
Do you
So,
think this would have benefited us if we'd had it, say, the last 3 years?
oh, probably so. I think, I think that you oftentimes put policies like this in place to help you if something happens. You don't expect that it's going to happen necessarily, but like Phil says, we're really in a world now of accountability, and so putting some things like this in place to start off with, at least show that we're prepared in case there would be a problem down the road. And so it's not something that we had, previously. So
that's all I had.
It seems to me if you're going to have a code of conduct, which we've decided we need, there needs to be a mechanism to enforce it.
I think that's what Ray was kind of advocating too.
And this seems like, if you accept that there needs to be a mechanism, this seems like a very reasonable mechanism to have. And I know there were concerns last month about sort of, I'll use the term due process generally. This seems to me to have addressed those, to create a much more defined process for how an accusation would be levied, how it would be investigated, how it would be resolved.
yeah. And we've got, like I said, we've got some of these, not exactly these steps, but obviously when there's a concern with faculty or staff or students, even a student violation of code of conduct, there's a due process piece that's in place because you want to be fair to the folks that are involved and be able to have consistent format that you can follow if you need to do that.
Okay, again, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion, questions, anyone?
Can you restate the motion?
Sure. Who
I
made the
think
motion?
it was
To approve the
to approve the violation of board policy as presented.
Trustee Law?
Yes.
Trustee Rhodes?
Yes.
Trustee Winslow?
No.
Trustee Lexford?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
No.
Trustee Howell?
Yes.
Passes 4-2.
Okay, moving on to the next one, resolution of censure. That one was on before too. wasn't it?
This was, and again, Ray, reviewed this. He felt like now in this situation again, if the violation of board policy steps are followed, indicates, the last bullet point on page 18 identifies that one of the courses of action could be a resolution of censure if you wanted, if you felt like that was the right action. And he felt like now if the violation of board policy was in place, then this policy on resolution of censure was appropriate, more appropriate maybe than having it as just a standalone like we had it on the agenda last month, that there's some other steps that could be taken rather than going to, a resolution of censure. So he again felt like this was appropriate and
So having approved the violation of board policy, this would define resolution of censure, and I move we adopt it.
Second?
Second.
Further discussion?
Yeah, I had just a few things that I wanted to talk about. Is there a similar policy somewhere that would grant the board as much say, I guess, for lack of a better term, in any similar actions by the executive board of a college?
well, we
like
have
Kim or any of her assistants, immediate underlings?
Sure, there's policy in place that there's employee policy in place that would
A public way to that kind of activity. Is there a similar public censure ability that the board can take let's say the top 6 administrators, for instance, of the college,
Well,
and say,
I'm,
okay, you're violated this policy and we're going to have to censure you for that?
no, there's not. I mean, you would have the ability, because I'm your employee, I mean, you would have the ability to, to enforce our employee grievance process or.
None of which can be discussed in a public meeting, correct?
If you decide to fire me, it would be public. I
The
mean,
action would
seriously.
be, But not the discussion.
Not the personnel issue, and it's the same way with our employees. We wouldn't discuss personnel issues publicly in a lot of circumstances. But yeah, I mean, if you guys would decide to fire me, that obviously would be public.
And I think that would be true of this policy also. We would have our discussion in executive session, and
Yeah.
we'd come out in public and vote to censure.
I'm
So
sure
it wouldn't
that
be a
there's
public,
somewhere in there
it
that
wouldn't
that
be a
says
public
that, and I
display,
missed it.
most likely.
I'm sure that that's in here somewhere that you wanted me to vote on, right?
What's in, I don't,
That
what's
it's
in what?
all in executive session. Because I don't think any of that is, that's why I was wanting to know if there was a parallel policy for, I don't know. And I don't think there is, so continue, I'm done, I don't have any questions.
We have a first, we have a second. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, I call for a vote.
Trustee Law,
Yes.
trustee Rhodes,
Yes.
trustee Winslow,
No.
trustee Lexington,
Yes.
trustee Smith,
No.
trustee Powell,
Yes.
passes 4 to 0.
Okay, moving on to the next action item is the reduction in force for disinvestment costs.
And that's Shelley,
Shelley.
and there she is.
I am here. Good evening. We have brought before you a policy that clearly defines how a reduction in force strategy would be implemented. As we continue to review the college's current policies, we found that the one that was currently in existence was not sufficient for the evaluation, selection, and the separation practices that are necessary to be performed in a reduction in force strategy. So in particular, we created an updated policy that specifically addresses which employees would be included or excluded from reduction in force benefit, what the reemployment and notification guidelines looked like, what the separation pay and benefit information would be provided if they were separated, if an employee was separated from employment. And this information also includes very clear steps that are to be followed for the organizational review of the development of a reduction in force plan. So really making sure that that process is well documented and determined before any execution of a reduction in positions is done. So the same would be held for a disinvestment of positions as it relates to programs or services that we no longer offer, and also for departmental reductions due to either budgetary considerations or other reasons that we may have for reducing workforce. So this policy that really goes into quite a bit more detail about those processes and the conditions and also the structures for reduction in force. The current policy statement you'll find really only addressed outplacement assistance payment. It didn't address how we process a reduction in force and actually plan for it and execute it appropriately. So we're proposing that policy be eliminated completely and replaced with this particular policy that gives us more structure and more details on the process that we would follow as we have, if we had an opportunity that we had to enforce a reduction in force or a disinvestment of positions. So the policy statement clearly says that this applies to all regular full-time and part-time employees, with the exception of faculty who are covered under the negotiated collective bargaining agreement on their own methodology for a reduction in force. Additional guidelines there are following that indicate other employees that would be excluded from the reduction in force benefits that would be applicable. And that would include temporary employees or folks that are in 90-day probationary, student workers, things of that nature, and those are all listed there as well. Some of the other guidelines that we included are for reemploying someone. Many times we have additional positions that become available, and some of those folks that had worked for us previously that were reduced out of a position that no longer exists are certainly qualified to do those jobs. And so we want to make sure that we consider some of the factors that happened when they were reduced, such as a loss of their previous benefits. Many of them may have a fairly good sizable bank of sick leave that they had to forfeit at the time they lost their position. And so these are some options we thought about as we look at bringing people back within a short period of time, that those things could be reinstated. Seniority would be reinstated so that they would earn vacation and they would earn eligibility for those benefits at their previous seniority. And then notification practices and separation pay. So really identifying how the college will notify employees, but also how we would separate severance or pay them out a certain amount of salary, and defining that as 4 weeks pay upon a separation. And how what is all included in the final payment, including vacation and payouts and sick leave and all of those things according to policy that currently exists for separated employees. And then finally, we listed out the procedures for reduction in force or disinvestment and disinvestment determinations. So what are the steps we want to follow to really make sure that we are capturing all of the information and data that we need to be able to make informed decisions about something as significant as a disinvestment or a reduction in force. So these 7 items here are really more of a process of how we will make those determinations and who they will be reviewed by, how they will be approved, and kind of who are the responsible parties for putting such information together. In addition to that, we'll have some standard forms that we'll want them to use so that there's a consistency in process for how folks are providing this information to the leadership team. I think one of the final things that I would say is as we look at employees in a group that are being reduced or a position that is being reduced and there are multiple employees, we really wanted to make sure that we had a fairly defined criteria for the process by which we would identify which individuals would be reduced. It's not all about seniority sometimes, but that is certainly one of the factors. Sometimes the skill sets that are needed are not always inherent in the most senior person. So those that have like positions, all those factors would be weighed and carried out. In addition to that, that particular process also includes a risk assessment, and that is also a rationale in looking at those that would be separated in various positions, from various positions. So we think that this gives us a much clearer guideline. It gives us, the background that we need, and certainly solidifies that for consistency. So we would ask that the board approve this policy, and I'm certainly open to any questions that you may have.
We have a motion to approve the reduction in
I have a
force.
question. Sorry, what? I got a question first.
We do the votes.
I'm going to make the motion so we can move to discussion. I'll make the motion that we do so, as presented.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay. Now, any discussion? Go ahead, Joe.
Discussion involves an amendment, which will be odd now that we've moved. Anyway, on the reemployment part that says they will apply for consideration, is that application open to the public so we can find the best qualified candidate for the said position that's open? I don't want to just
Yes.
move somebody that teaches Russian into math because they taught math before.
No, it would be a position that is posted. Our hourly positions are posted internally for 5 days, and then after that, they're posted externally. So this person, if they saw a position they want to be considered for, would have to go through the application, interview, hiring process, the same as anyone else that we would be looking for as qualified.
So the position they're looking for would be public knowledge that it's an open position at that point.
After 5
That's
days.
correct.
Okay, that was my concern.
Yeah.
So my question is, you said 5 days, right? So if only one person applies within that 5-day period, if they have some kind of resume that you like or want, then they have the job and it never does get posted beyond that point?
No, it does get posted externally. It's just that we want to allow for our internal base of employees to have access to open positions prior to that.
Shelley, is there a minimum length of time that it's posted to the public, or is it just until there's a suitable applicant? Or
No, that's generally determined by the candidate pool. And so a position is open for applicants as long as needed to find a viable candidate pool.
So are you saying if
Have,
one
if
of
we
your
have,
applicants from in-house is viable, would you just accept them before, like if the public only has 1 day, as soon as and our in-house person is viable, is it just settled at that point? We move them to that position?
well, it depends, it depends on, the person's qualifications, and you want the best applicant or the best candidate. I will tell you that my philosophy is that I am in favor of internal promotion and internal growth for people that do apply for positions that have the qualifications. And so I want internal employees to have just as much chance to apply for jobs as an external candidate does. However, if the manager is interested in viewing multiple candidates, which I think is a good idea, they should be able to leave that position open until they have they may only need to look at 5 candidates. They may need to look at 25. It just depends on the job, the candidate pool, and the internal candidate base.
Doesn't sound like there's any set time though.
No, not really. I mean, we could have a position open for a couple of months. Sometimes particularly with faculty, it's all about timing. And so depending upon when your position comes open, you may have to run it open for several months before you get a strong candidate pool because of when people are actually looking at jobs. Sometimes we hold off on opening them until the most opportune moment for when teachers or faculty members would actually be at the end of their contracts in other locations or what have you, to be able to be open to apply. We've had some jobs that we have open for several months and we don't get a good candidate pool. So we'll close it and then we'll reopen it another time. So it just really depends on timing and where the candidate pool sits. Some are harder to fill than others, obviously. I mean, it's terribly hard to get an electrician, very hard to get an HVAC. So, sometimes we have to run it multiple times before we get, enough candidates. Sometimes when we have a position that we have some candidates on, but not a full enough candidate pool, if we close that, we'll let those candidates know that it may be reopened at a later time. Or in some instances, when we do repost it, perhaps making a few changes to the job description or something to make it more clear what we're looking for, then we will move people over to that posting if they'd posted on the previous one, things like that. So it's all about managing the candidates and managing the postings to get the best opportunity to hire the best person.
Shelley, are the reemployment and the benefits provisions, in what ways are these different than our policies right now for employees who are terminated in a different situation? So if someone is, they're terminated from job A, if they come back and apply for a different job and get hired by Butler a month later, is their reemployment treated the same way as how we're treating it here, or are we creating a different process for folks that are going out under a reduction in force?
That's a great question. So previously to this policy, we did not have a reentry plan in place for those that had left Butler voluntarily and returned to Butler within a short period of time. And that is definitely something I am interested in doing. And this particular policy addresses those that were reduced at no fault of their own. And so that's why that was kind of opened that window to really look at that opportunity if they came back within a short period of time. I would like to be able to extend that consideration of this, particularly for some of those that come back within a very short period of time, but we haven't completely done that. The benefit side to it, we have allowed for if someone returns within a 30-day window that we would waive like the eligibility of the 30 days for waiting for benefits.
What about payout of unused leave?
That is the same in any separation. So we have a policy in place that any earned vacation would be paid out, and 120 hours of the sick leave is paid out if the employee has been with us for a minimum of 3 years.
The other question
Those
I
things
had
are currently in place, but there's, employees earn quite a bit of vacation and sick leave each year. So there's so many times, particularly for sick leave, that they're not going to ever use it all, right? And so that amount is held as, earned time if they ever need to use it. But when they leave, they only get 120 hours paid out. So if somebody left and they had 600 hours of sick leave in their account, and we paid out 120 hours, then when they came back and they'd be reemployed, they would not have anything to go back to. And so that's where we ask that we could reinstate whatever that balance was when they left, that at no fault of their own is no longer available to them.
Shelley, the other question I had was, did we give any thought to severance agreements and releases? If we're going to give, most of my experience for employers that are going to pay out severance pay, they're getting a release of claims in exchange for it. So we don't have someone accept our severance pay, accept our benefits, and then challenge why they were selected instead of somebody else.
Yeah, I did think about that. And we did not put anything together initially. It's still something that might be something we want to look at. One of the reasons we went with the pay for 4 weeks is that we wanted to be able to, and we looked at it more as a continuance of pay versus a severance agreement, because we were giving people little to no notice at the time of a separation. And so it's not like we said, okay, you have, 3 months and then your position's going away, or even 3 weeks. And many times we were telling them the day of that notification that job was ending. And so we wanted to make sure we had some continuance of pay so they could continue with their health insurance. They could continue to make it through what would have been one more pay period for our monthly paid employees. So we weren't really considering it as a severance payout necessarily as much as it was continuance of salary. But that is something probably that if we were going to do things a little differently, that would be something to look at.
I guess recognize that once we put this in our policy, it's no longer going to support a release by itself. So if we decide we want to release down the road, we have to give more than what we're agreeing to give here.
Right.
I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, but it's you mentioned that we thought about continuing to give that thought and perhaps do it down the road. That would require another revision to the policy, or it would require us to pay more in those instances where we think we'd want to release.
Would you like to just add that to the language and vote on this next month? Have her add that to what we're voting on? And just...
Well, I don't know. I guess I need to give some thought. I appreciate Shelley's explanation that unlike a termination for cause, so to speak, where presumably the employee's been counseled and there's been performance deficiencies that have been discussed, those shouldn't happen where the employee is caught entirely off guard. These situations are different because the employees wouldn't know ahead of time, and it's not being driven by their performance, it's being driven by external factors. So I don't know that 4 weeks without a release agreement is necessarily a bad thing. I didn't know whether it was, I wanted to ask whether it was something that we'd given thought to and consciously decided we didn't want to have it in there, and that's what my interpretation from Shelley's answer is that she did.
Shelley, this is Lance, is there any reason why if we open these jobs back up for 5 days internally, that we don't at least use that as a minimum to have it posted publicly for that length of time, to maybe give somebody that's no longer, unless I misunderstood something, if somebody is no longer working there, if that job's filled within 5 days internally, is there any reason we wouldn't have some period of time where it's posted publicly? Or did I misunderstand you earlier that it's not?
We typically always post publicly. I don't think we've ever had a position that we only posted internally, since I've been there anyway. But the internal posting is to give voice or give placement or to give notice of to our internal base first. And then before we open it publicly. So we try and make sure that that opportunity exists. We don't have a time frame for how long it has to be posted externally. Again, that goes back to, the candidate base that you're trying to select from.
But I also don't think, Shelley, it has never been our practice to post a job internally for that 5-day time frame and then post it externally for like only 24 hours or something like that. I mean, that's not good EEOC practice when you want to try and provide or gain a good applicant pool. That's not ever been the college's practice that I'm aware of. And
that's correct. And I just want to go back and just clarify so that you understand that the only group that we do that for is for our hourly ops staff.
Yeah.
We do not do it in our admin, institutional support, or our faculty. We don't just post it internally for 5 days. It's just for that group.
Okay, could I ask a couple questions?
Julie, you need to speak in your microphone. I've had a couple of text messages that they can't hear you very well when you're asking questions. Thank you.
Well, this thing's blinking.
Oh, well, here, use mine.
That may be why.
I could hear you when you were talking in it, though.
Well, now it's blinking. Like, so who knows when it'll go out. Anyway.
Okay. So
okay,
pull it down. Pull it down to
I'm
your
going
mouth.
to give you the
Thank
benefit of my experiences that were outside a school entity and were more in the corporation practices. Usually, for instance, and look, I'm not presenting these for argument. I'm presenting these as things to think about. Okay. One thing that I know in corporations, when an employee leaves, generally the company, unless it is an absolute emergency, and I mean the only person in the world that knew a certain code, then generally they would demand 1 year go by before they would consider rehiring. However, after 1 year, they would be completely accorded all of any vacation times. So if they had accrued 4 weeks before per year, then they would again accrue those. But there had to be a year time frame. So you couldn't rehire somebody within a few months. You had to wait a year and then hire them again. And I never had an exception to that. Then another thing I wanted to point out is maybe we should think about, as far as the really difficult positions that you were talking about in HVAC and electrician, have we done any kind of comparison? Now, you know, I'm always thinking about cost, because my background is, of course, in finance and trying to maintain, I guess, get the best work for the least amount. But at any rate, have we considered any contracting for those HVAC and electrician? Have we even done a cost study to see if we could hire somebody that might be cheaper than employing somebody with benefits full-time for the college in any of those fields that you might be having problems with? As far as not trying to skip around, but as far as the severance, I'm in total agreement with the severance being considered anything that is included in the package of when you part company, which would include what Trustee Rhodes was talking about a while ago. And actually, most companies I've worked for have had a minimum severance as well as a maximum severance. And it was differently tiered according to what kind of an employee that they were. I know that you were talking about 5 days internal posting prior to external posting of jobs, but I'd like to see a mandatory 5 days external as well. If we're going to have an internal minimum, then we need to have an external minimum as well in order to net the number of employees, because I do think it's possible. It may not happen or may not have happened recently, but I do think it's possible sometimes to have a job posting up and then suddenly decide it's over with, and you posted it publicly because you were supposed to, so after a day it's taken off. I don't know that that happens, but I would like to have something in here about that. I guess any of those points would be welcome in this policy as long as we're changing it. I'm not so sure that we didn't, that we included everything we needed to include, especially when it comes to separation documents that need to be signed.
Did you want me to respond to any of that, or were you just making comment?
Well, you responded to everyone else, so I would expect you would respond.
Okay, well, some of I felt like you were kind of just expressing kind of what you knew, but so I guess I would say to your first statement, I think, was about hiring people back that have separated. And for about 26 years of my human resource life, I worked in industry and never came across a policy of like that you couldn't retire and hire somebody. We welcomed the opportunity to hire people that knew our culture, that understood our philosophies, that were good workers. And when they came back, we opened the doors and asked them to rejoin us. And we made sure that we showed ample appreciation for their years of service previously. So I don't know that I would limit the opportunity to rehire someone, unless, of course, they left us under disciplinary procedure or for reasons that were not favorable for their reemployment. And we do mark people as not eligible for rehire when we have those situations, so we know when those exist. The second part I would say about, again, the continuation of salary and whether or not a salary agreement or whatever, a session agreement. I did look at several policies, and with a reduction in force policy, some had them, some didn't. In the consideration of how we were looking at it, wasn't necessarily considered severance pay. It was more, again, as I said, a pay for notice of the separation. And we can certainly draft one and have our attorneys look at it and include that with the policy if we think it's necessary. I did see some policies that had a graduating scale for severance pay. So based on, if you had 10 years of service, you got, 1 week of pay for every year. If you had 5 years of service, you got so much. We did not elect to go that route. We don't have an occasion for a lot of reduction in force, but
Hey, you're talking about you and your
Sorry?
organization? Or when you say we, are you talking about you and your organization or college?
Yeah, the administration. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So that is, something to consider if that's, a burning issue to have a graduated scale for years of service and severance. That is, not necessarily out of the realm of what I've seen in other policies. A lot of that, of course, based on seniority. Let's see what I'm trying to make sure I have all the all the questions. The question about posting of jobs really is not something that's included in this policy per se. It's just that question was asked about how that condition exists. And that has been a practice of the college for many, many years. And also where I worked previously, we had a practice of posting internally first, because we also had a philosophy of developing people and making sure we gave them the opportunity for those open jobs first.
Right, and I agree with you there, really. I wasn't trying to say that
as far as coming up with a must be posted for so many days externally.
Right. Or internally, either, both.
Yeah, I don't guess I have a problem with that. If it needs to be posted for, a minimum of 5 days externally, I don't have a problem with that.
But that's not part of
I had a problem with that it hasn't remained posted externally for any period of time.
Shelley, is that part of this policy, though?
It is not, and it would not be.
No, so that'd be something else we could consider outside.
That would be another policy.
All right, so, Mr. Chairman, maybe move
So
forward.
the contracted ones? The
Sorry?
contracted ones that you said you were having a hard time finding, have you given any thought to those?
Oh, we have looked at several options. It is quite expensive. What we do is there are certain projects that we need to outsource for electrician or HVAC or something like that, something more than what we are able to do in-house. That is done. We have looked at hiring even custodials from temporary staffing agencies. We do that occasionally as needed because those are very hard positions to fill. A lot of people don't want to drive all the way out to El Dorado for $11 an hour or even Andover. So, the pool here is not that great. We don't have a large employment base in El Dorado of candidates. So we are hiring people from Wichita many times, or Andover area, or Rose Hill, or Benton, those type of things. So Towanda. So yes, we have. And, we even last year, maybe it was 18 months ago, we started a plumbing apprentice program as well as an electrician's program for taking individuals that had an interest and have been working alongside, or they were maintenance techs that showed a strong capacity for and interest in those two fields. And we have been, we put them in apprentice programs with very specific learning outcomes each year. And one of those is to get their journeyman license in those areas. So we have 2 employees in that category right now. And both of them have received their journeyman license in their fields. And so we continue to train them and provide those learning opportunities, and they attend classes, and we nurture those skill building activities on the job as well. And as they pass each kind of milestone each year, then their pay elevates as they obtain those goals. So those are additional things that we've been trying to really help grow our own, if you will, so that we can backfill and we can have a steady growth of staff in those areas.
Okay, I think we've had pretty good discussion on this. Is any further discussion really necessary for this issue?
Do you want to make a really quick new motion and add that
We have
severance
to
pay
rule on the
letter?
motion that's before us. right
Well,
now.
we can,
No, that's what.
do you want to add that?
I'm fine with Shelley's explanation of why it wasn't included.
Okay.
No, I don't have an amendment to add.
Okay. Well, we have a motion, we have a second. Discussion's ended. Would you please call the vote?
Trustee Law,
Yes.
trustee Rhodes,
Yes.
trustee Renzo,
Yes.
trustee Lechtenberg,
Yes.
trustee Smith.
Yes.
Moving on to the next board action item,
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Shelley.
Shelley.
Thank you,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Ambition, I guess
Yeah.
is how you pronounce it, agreement.
Well, and just real quickly, this would typically have gone on the consent agenda. John had submitted this within the right time frame, but we were waiting. When Ray reviews these agreements like this, we always want the potential jurisdiction to state that it's Kansas as opposed to someplace out of state. And so if you look on the fourth page of this, the area that's highlighted, the choice of jurisdiction, we were waiting for an updated copy of this that identified that change had been made. And it's usually never an issue. But John wants to try and get this in place because Mobition would like to start this training as soon as possible rather than waiting until November. And so I felt like I couldn't put it on the consent agenda with that still, with us still waiting on that update. And so what I would ask is that you would go ahead, there's no cost to us. This is just a training that's offered through beta, but that you would go ahead and approve this with the understanding that we'll have an updated agreement that will change that jurisdiction to Kansas. And once we get that, then I can get it signed and John can go ahead and they can go ahead with training if you're comfortable with that. We just didn't want to wait until November, and it just didn't get to us in time. So that's why I put it on board action rather than consent, because I wanted you to have an opportunity to ask questions if you needed to.
There are several things on the consent agenda that I would have asked questions about. Just saying.
Well, that
Can you give me
opportunity exists
We'll
at the
do
front of
that.
the meeting to change.
Like a 30-second pitch for Ambition, because I didn't catch that email earlier on what exactly they're training for.
Well, it's to provide training for folks that want to do mobile home inspections. And so Ambition is the one that offers that training specifically. And when what's happening is that Beta is just facilitating that. They're helping find, people that want to go through that training, but Ambition's the one that's actually doing the training. We aren't doing it.
Right.
We're kind of the go-between.
We get students for them, we get them.
Yeah, yeah.
Does it say somewhere on here that it is strictly for mobile homes?
The topic for action, the very front page identifies that it's for mobile home inspection. Under the report. American Home Inspectors Training, it's for mobile home inspections. The way I understand it.
Okay, but.
Oh, maybe it's not mobile, maybe it's just
mobile
home.
home.
I don't
inspection.
think this is mobile home.
Okay.
It's any home inspection.
I'm sorry.
No,
I
it's
was-
okay.
I've
I
never
was
heard of
just-
a mobile home inspector. So
I
that
think
makes
I
more
was
sense.
mixed up with the Ambition thinking mobile, but home inspection, so.
That makes more sense.
So if we get the updated agreement and they've changed the jurisdiction to Kansas, we'll go ahead and sign it and move forward. If it's not, then we'll go back to them again and, ask them to redo it. But there's usually never an issue with getting that jurisdiction changed.
I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion to approve the agreement with Ambition to deliver American Home Inspectors Training Certification Training, subject to an agreement that they will change the choice of law section in the current agreement to include Kansas as the choice of
I'll second.
I'll make the motion, or either one.
law. First, have a second?
Yep.
Further discussion? None? Okay. Would you call for the vote? please?
Trustee Locke,
Yes.
trustee Rhodes,
Yes.
trustee Winslow,
Yes.
trustee Lexberg,
Yes.
trustee Smith.
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
And it is the consent agenda. Nothing's been moved off the consent agenda, so I'll call for
No discussion then?
down on the
Consent agenda, you don't.
Okay, well then, let me just make a note, please, on the record. There are many things in here that I have many questions about. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to get onto SharePoint. I'm not trying to say that one person or another is not doing their job, but in the future, I know that if I were in charge, I would not have all of these things under a consent agenda, especially when a lot of these items are so costly to the college. I need a better explanation than what's been provided. And it's not trying to offend anyone. I'm just saying that, you know, we really need to pay attention to how much money we're spending. And it just seems like a lot of these things, I just have questions on them, you know? I don't know if strategic planning by MC is something that we've always had, or if it's brand new, or if any training comes with this, or if that's what Kim always used, or if this is the first time they've done strategic planning. But for that price, we probably could have hired it done. Just
We've
saying.
used MC multiple years.
For a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
About 11 years.
I've got a conflict of interest for C2. And also I emailed Kim earlier. I was wanting to ask Mel a couple questions on that item. Get
I
other
mean,
bids.
here's the problem with the consent agenda. At the beginning, and I think I've explained this a couple times
You
in the
have,
chair, if you're going to want to discuss one of the items set on the consent agenda, at the very beginning, then you move to remove that item and place it as a third action item. Then we'll move it and we'll make it we'll have a motion, first, second discussion, and then a vote on it separately. But
And
that's-
Shelby's done that before.
Yeah,
Yes,
we've
that's
done it.
true. However, I have also seen you decide, Mr. President, that we weren't going to add anything or change the agenda in which we could make these, I guess, discussable.
That's not,
So,
no,
I
that's
did
not fair
try.
or accurate. We
That's
had
just
this
not
very
true.
discussion last week.
Yeah.
Last month, this very same thing came up
Yeah.
because an item didn't get moved off the consent agenda and you challenged it.
Okay,
And
is
it
there
was
a reason
explained
why we
last
have
month.
to have them on a consent agenda when there's like less than 5?
Well, yeah, you put things on the consent agenda that don't need discussion unless you want discussion, and you can pull them off. I mean, it's to kind of encapsulate the meeting and move things along.
I
and,
understand that.
Yeah, so that's why things are on the consent agenda. It's a typical portion of any policy in any board agenda. You have consent agenda items.
And Shelby's had items moved before.
I will make sure I have a sticky note at the beginning next time.
Yeah.
Because just the welding table's too expensive. We didn't get any bids. Our bus lease for the athletes is too expensive. We could buy a bus. And
We're not even getting any bids. We're
That's-
not doing our fiduciary.
Well,
duty.
I
We
think
don't.
if you look at the
Sorry.
welding information, it's a sole source.
they're
Lincoln
not
Welding
sold.
is the
There's a
only
lot of
one.
them online. And I talked with our vendor. I'm actually working for the vendor here in a month, which is kind of ironic. But
Well, when you have questions like that, I know you emailed me today, Shelby. You had your board materials
No, I
at the
know.
very first of the week before. And so it helps us if you've got questions as you read through, let me know. And that way I can have people prepared with that information, or I can email you back even, with some of those questions. Happy to do that. Mel and I kind of emailed back and forth today, but I didn't know what your questions were, but
And
I'm
after I
really
emailed you,
happy
I
to
was
do that if,
wrapping up the project,
yeah.
No, I'll make a sticky note next time. And
Yeah.
Get it.
You could even adjust the agenda as you felt appropriate.
Well, once the agenda goes out to you guys and it's posted, then I feel like we would need to come to the meeting and do an official
and pull it out
motion.
like we
Yeah,
did.
do an official motion to
As
make
long as you
adjustments.
would be agreeable to
You can pull things off the
having
consent
these
agenda.
pulled out, Mr. Chairman,
Or I'll
I'd
try to
really.
email it prior, say, hey, this is what I want.
It's,
I've done
that's
that
nice
it would
before
be a
too.
motion and
And then one
board
time it didn't
approval.
happen, so I'm kind of,
Never,
but that's,
never have we not when it was been requested to be moved at the appropriate time.
Well, that's.
The thing with trying to get it done early, and I understand, Shelby, is that like Kim says, if there's a question about it, whoever may be involved in that transaction, we know that we can say, can you be at the meeting to answer Shelby's questions?
Right.
That's why we try to do it early. But Robert's Rules of Orders, if you want to, at the very beginning, when we move for the approved agenda, I mean, before you can ask
Say,
to
I'd like
change
these
it,
items removed.
modify it,
Right.
that's fine, but it doesn't really help set up
No,
a
I got it.
discussion
I'll
with
have a-
everybody. But
Raise
anyway,
my hand
that's
next time.
kind of how we do things. We have a
I'm gonna
first
hold
and
you to it.
So, Laura.
Okay. I can call the vote. please.
Trustee Law,
Yes.
trustee Rhodes,
Yes.
trustee Winslow,
No.
trustee Lexford,
Yes.
trustee Smith.
If I have a conflict of interest with C2, how do I vote?
I don't know.
Can't.
You can't.
Because it's not
Abstain.
pulled out.
Abstain.
Oh, abstain. Okay, I'm sorry. I did-
Correct.
Okay. And trustee Hal.
Okay, supplemental information. Jen, anything you want to cover?
No, 216 has the key performance indicators, no change. The statement of revenue and expenditures on 217, we're just a few months into our, budget year right now. November's board meeting will be back in the Dankert boardroom. This says President's Conference Room, but we'll be, I'm sorry, that's the Finance Committee meeting, yeah. Dankert boardroom, and then we'll, like I said, we're planning on a work session that goes along with the board meeting to do a budget update.
After or before?
No, I think it'll be after, because we'll do board finance ahead.
So you're gonna have dinner?
Well, we'll have some sort of,
Can we
box
bring
lunch
a
or
covered
something.
dish? We could do that.
Box lunch.
And,
Well, we're not even supposed to have
vegetables.
open food on campus, so.
Okay, this is Shelby Smith. Next month, I would like to see if we could have ESOM here, because I had some questions on page 216. What we get in January, all the information now we're getting in October is virtually the same, except for a couple of slight changes.
Right.
I can respond to that.
Sounds odd.
Hey, there you are.
Some of these
I am-
things will change from month to month because they're annual.
Okay.
Some of this is like border regents information. So ESOM, you can.
Yeah.
Sure. I can chime in there. Shelby, you're generally right. Most of the information is on an annual basis, and there's a certain point where we give it to the regulators, they're certified, and that's when I share it with you. The next round of information is coming out in November. You'll see a couple of updates, and again in January and February you'll see 2 or 3 more, and quite a few of them in March and April.
Okay. I had a question at the bottom of the transfer GPA. In January, it said we were 268, and the average of other students was 255, and now we're at 322, and the average of other transferees are 322. Is that just something where our numbers were possibly off, or did everybody get so much smarter in the last 6-8 months?
The calculations, that's a good question. The calculations that the Kansas Board of Regents uses to calculate those numbers, they have made some changes as to what the denominator and numerator is. So that's why you see the changes.
Trustee Smith, if you just, when we make those changes, I highlight them the month that they're made. So if you'll go back to your other books, you'll see when the changes were made.
Okay.
They're all highlighted.
Okay.
Okay.
So can I make a motion to adjourn, sir? Are we at that point?
You absolutely may. Do I have a second?
Now everybody wants to stay apparently.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
By the way, thank you.
I don't
for
think we
getting
need
it
to
out a little
discuss that
early.
one, so I'm just going to
Well-
call for a vote.
Yes.
Trustee Rhodes?
Yes.
Trustee Winslow? Trustee Leichenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Smith?
Yes.
Oh, come on.
Well, I had one joke you guys are killing before we close. We got this lease agreement with the bus, blah, blah, blah. If you look at the president's name, his name is John D. Goodbrake.
Well, that's
For a bus company, I'm not sure. I think it's made up. You can't be John Goodbrake and you work for a bus company.
Julie, do you approve?
That's a joke. I know I'm not serious, but
Closing the
it's like
meeting.
how convenient. Say it was a good joke.
They didn't say it was a. Dr. Crawl, are you thinking with the